Once upon a time, there was no internet. Humans communicated in person via conversation or over distance via a written or typed letter sent using a postage stamp. The GIF was unknown, and the equivalent of a meme was something you'd find in Private Eye magazine. When multiplayer gaming required another human's physical presence, and a game patch was something your mum sewed onto your backpack. Where did the digital gaming age begin for a company like Nintendo, who was changing the face of home gaming for millions from the mid-80s onwards? How did they embrace the digital and online services and develop them to what they are today? And why have they traditionally found getting it right quite so challenging compared to other companies? Let's get techie. Communications as we understand them now were a sci-fi fantasy back in the 1960s.
Gentlemen, I'm just off to New York. Before I go, don't get charged. Bye.
Well, recorded company anyway. Of course, I could have taken it round to Charlie's office myself. But, well, the photograph's just as good. Anyway, old BJ will take it to him. Several copies. If it ever bumps into anything.
In 1962, the first functioning communication satellite was launched with the purpose of developing global communications and services such as television and telephone calls, which led to home entertainment advances and mobile communications over the next 30 years. Back on Earth, attempts were made from the 60s onwards to network computers over distances using packet switching networks. This led to the creation of the TCP/IP system, with intranets emerging in the early 80s and ISPs in the late 80s. British computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee created the WWW World Wide Web, which allowed documents in a system to be accessed from any point on a network. Before the age of broadband, your internet and telephone line were one. You would dial the ISP, and a modem would encode and decode the information. Broadband used a wider type of connection at high speed, and is always on, but has a different frequency used via a filter, and it separates a phone and data connection out. So now you know the technology, I want to take you on a journey to Japan in 1987. In 1987, Nintendo joined forces with Nomura Securities Financial Company, after then-president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, had a vision to develop the ability to network information on the Famicom system. Nintendo R&D built the modem hardware, and Nomura Securities developed the client, server software and databases. It was released as the Famicom Net system in 1988 in Japan. It used a card-based system and dial-up to access server information for stocks, betting, weather, jokes and game cheats. Its application was investigated in America as a gambling product, but attracted concern about children's access to gambling. Although forward-thinking, the home internet age was in its infancy, and the limitations of access and product distribution meant it only shipped 130,000 units in its 13-year lifespan. Despite plans to add an information network service in the early 90s, it never developed into a delivered product. Nintendo did, however, gain a wealth of information by adapting the system in 1991 to develop the Super Mario Club kiosk system. This was a series of arcade-style kiosks using the same Famicom modem system placed in toy shops. Members could access kiosks to search online Famicom game reviews in a database populated by shops and other members. Nintendo could analyse this review data and search behaviours of users to feed directly back into their own development process. And this set them up nicely for what came next. In 1995, again in Japan, Nintendo launched the Satellaview for the Super Famicom. The unit came bundled with a BSX game pack, software for downloading data, and an 8M memory pack for saving data. This was the concept. A satellite signal would be broadcast by a company called St. Giga during a 1-hour slot each day. The user would connect for the duration of the slot, where the scrambled signal would be decoded by the Satellaview and accessed via the BSX pack. It wasn't a cheap setup. As well as the Satellaview bundle, which was 14 to 18,000 yen, you would also require a tuner to access the St. Giga signal at 33,000 yen, and then a monthly subscription fee to both St. Giga and Nintendo. Nevertheless, it's estimated that there was 116,500 active users and subscribers by 1997. The BSX pack had an interactive menu to select downloads and was rooted in an imaginary town. Your avatar could download locations for the town. Games, magazines, message boards and previews of future games could then be viewed. You could also access pre-releases of games and some original Satellaview games, as well as some Famicom and Super Famicom games. Remarkably for the era, the system facilitated the earliest version of DLC, with downloadable characters and content. You could also access the SoundLink system, where voice actors narrated through a particular game, giving hints and tips along the way.
ゼルダ姫が戻られた。姫！
ご心配をかけましたね。
ご無事で何よりです。まずはお城までお戻りください。
いいえ、時間がありません。
Nintendo stopped the partnership with St. Giga in 1999, with the whole system ending in 2000. Again, Nintendo had a great forward-thinking concept, so what went wrong? Firstly, it was expensive and relied on complex hardware that could be hard to get hold of. It was also restrictive. If you weren't there at the transmission time, the moment was gone. There was no catch-up service or +1 channel, as a lot of content was episodic, particularly the radio play-esque SoundLink. It was impossible to fill in missed content. It was also not widely supported by developers, although some mainline franchises, such as Zelda and F-Zero, released Satellaview content. It was seen more as a novelty, and with a low subscription base, content eventually waned to the point of Nintendo spending more than it was making from the service. As the N64 was released, so too was the 64DD. The 64DD system sold approximately 15,000 units in Japan from 1999 to 2001. The system was inspired by its Satellaview predecessor and again came as a bundle, including a 64DD unit, an N64 modem, 4 meg RAM pack, and a RANnet browser disk. There was a subscription to RANnet for the online access and the discs which were mail order. 64DD allowed internet surfing, a members-only portal, email, magazines and data sharing such as IMs and message boards. Nintendo promised industry-changing features such as watching each other play games, multiplayer online, music streaming, an online shop and more, but commercially there simply wasn't enough subscribers to make developer investment worthwhile. Only 10 discs ended up being released despite 60 being announced. Those that didn't make it were reworked and ported. For example, Animal Forest was ported to the GameCube and became Animal Crossing, and Cabbage was ported to the DS and became Nintendogs. So what went wrong that the lifespan of the unit was just 3 years? Firstly, it was repeatedly delayed, which allowed competitors to gain ground. At launch, limited quantities were produced because Nintendo knew they had missed the mark, and the GameCube was already in the works. Secondly, Nintendo hadn't made the transition to CD tech that the PlayStation and Dreamcast had. The 64DD was limited, hard to get via mail order, and more expensive as a result. Finally, Nintendo had simply again been a victim of their vision. Disposable income and infrastructure were not in place, and so again, sales were low and limited just to Japan. Another Japanese release in 2001 was the mobile adapter compatible with the Game Boy Color, Advance and SP models. A cartridge and cable for mobile phones allowed online messaging, articles and game connectivity such as trading Pokemon in Pokemon Crystal or unlocking characters in Mobile Golf. The use of a mobile phone line to connect was expensive, and with the main age demographic of Game Boy users unlikely to have mobile phones, the uptake of the service was poor and it was discontinued in 2002. In 1999, Shigeru Miyamoto said that online services were an important aspect of family entertainment, but that Nintendo were more interested in secure family-friendly content. The GameCube was released in 2001 and had no built-in online connectivity or centralised online service. A broadband or modem adapter was available to purchase from Nintendo. However, any online services remained the responsibility of developers. Phantasy Star Online was showcased at E3 in 2001 and was released in 2002 with an $8.95 monthly subscription fee. Satoru Iwata maintained the position that Nintendo didn't feel that online gaming was a sustainable business model via subscriptions, and as such, only 8 games were ever released with LAN or online connectivity. This short-sighted approach meant Sony, and particularly Microsoft with its Xbox Live model, completely blew away the GameCube in terms of flexibility, and as such, the GameCube couldn't compete. Nintendo were chased from the 6th-gen console scene, with their tail firmly between their legs. Although their strong franchise models had shifted game copies, the GameCube had not, in terms of predictive models, been a success. The way players wanted to access gameplay and the boom in home internet meant that Nintendo couldn't afford to maintain its distance with online services if it wanted to remain competitive.
over Britain there are little green lights that say, Go! 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 That say, get in.
The Wii was released in 2006 to huge international fanfare, because not only was it a novel method of gameplay, but because Nintendo finally had its own online service called Nintendo Wi-Fi Connection. This allowed players to use built-in connectivity to access channels on the Wii homepage, including the Wii Shop and online gameplay such as multiplayer and battling. This service extended to the Nintendo DS console, allowing connectivity on the move. This allowed the development of the Spot Pass service, which could transfer information even when the console was on standby. In 2012, Nintendo announced that the Wi-Fi connection service would be absorbed by the Nintendo Network service. This further streamlined services such as cross-platform play, friends lists, parental controls, and the online store. However, it meant some game support was stopped. The Wii and DS models were at the end of their production life, and this bridged the move to the 3DS and Wii U systems in 2011 and 2012 respectively. The network system included Miiverse as a Nintendo attempt at social media, TV services, internet, Club Nintendo loyalty, parental controls, shop, communication, etc., all in a centralised service, as well as online gaming and a personalised user account that tracked each user's history. Accounts were also accessible from a PC or smartphone. There was also legacy support for Nintendo Network service for some content, allowing for backwards compatibility when played on newer gen consoles. This support ceased in 2014, with the Wii Shop itself closing in 2019. This was the setup that Nintendo did best with, and has spanned 13 years in these two forms. Why is this the case? Well, firstly, Nintendo had learnt lessons from Gen 6. It needed to be prepared to cater to the growing online trend that had furnished Sony and Microsoft with so much success. The model they chose was not subscription-based, but was available to all, including children without their own disposable income. The eShop model was like game window shopping, with the ability to immediately download a game being a good way of tempting consumers. It was also run directly by Nintendo, which allowed excellent support that was consistently designed and implemented. Clever touches such as being sent game demos to try on the 3DS only adds to the successful exploitation of the service. However, Nintendo was still lagging behind in some respects when compared to other Gen 7 consoles. For example, there was no trophy or achievement system provided by Nintendo, as well as a lack of live communication when gaming online, either by text or voice. The Switch launched in 2017, with built-in Wi-Fi as you would now expect. The user profile can be linked to a Nintendo account using social media or that used as a Nintendo Network ID. This helps with locating friends you already have on other devices, but still relies on the chunky friend ID method. Despite the ability to link the network ID to the Nintendo account, they are still separate entities, and there's no native support on the Switch for Nintendo Network ID accounts or their management. The subscription model for Switch services allows for multiplayer support, NES Games app, cloud storage for game saves, and special promotions. The paired app allows voice chat but is needed in addition to the console, which doesn't provide it natively. Furthermore, another app is needed for parental controls. The eShop is accessible on the console. Although the pricing is cheaper than its competitors, the service is once again very fragmented and lacks the polish and breadth of its competitors, as well as some of the perks offered by other services, such as achievement and trophy tracking, integrated voice and messaging functionality, and native streaming capability from the console directly.
As they say, playing together long distance makes the heart grow fonder.
At the end of the day, Nintendo have their strengths, but it is clear that connectivity hasn't traditionally been one of them. They've often been too forward-thinking, over-ambitious, or under-prepared. Nintendo have also put their own ideologies before what fans have been asking for on many occasions. Their vision of what makes good business sense can stagnate by either assuming the age of their demographic or what their demographic wants from a console. What is it that would improve online services from Nintendo for you? A unified system? Achievement tracking? Maybe the ability to stream straight from a console? I'd love to hear your views in the comments about what you'd like to see Nintendo bring to their online model in the future, or what you predict it will look like in years to come. Thanks for watching.